Hello everyone, and welcome back to the new YouTube channel, Dakota's Adventures by author E.H. Allen. Hello everyone, and welcome back. I'm author E.H. Allen, and I'll be reading the chapters from my book, Prince Dakota Angel and the Multiple Universe Guardians Induction. I want to remind everyone that characters and events portrayed in this book are fictitious. Any similarity to real persons, living or dead, is coincidental and not intended by the author. So now, this episode we'll begin with Chapter 5. Chapter 5, Beavers, Bridges, and Bolts. Prince Dakota glared at the closed steel door for a few more moments before he went into full attack mode. Since he was a telepathic empath, he had sensed a little boy's amusement at him being agitated with the murderous vamps on the other side of that door. If the vamps wanted to fight, then they came to the right place. Dakota was going to let them have it good. New paragraph. Oof. They're about to get a beat down, Prince Dakota thought before he said aloud after he glanced at the mug with yellowish gray skin. Mr. Data? Beverly? See to it all the people in the dungeons get back to the Inceptum safely through the QWD. Once they're gone, join the rest of us in the castle for a little beatdown fun, he added as he glanced at the other mugs that had come through with him and grinned as he activated his glowing energy baton and extended it to its full 5-foot beating length. They all grinned back as they too activated their batons. New paragraph. Of course, Your Majesty, Mr. Data said sternly as he and Beverly Henderson immediately carried out his orders and began directing the prisoners towards the wormhole door. They were both from the 24th century, but from separate universes and decades. Data was a self-aware, synthetic adult life form, and he had been activated for 5 years. But since he was actually advanced technology, not a biological life form, the age limit didn't apply to him. The mugs could utilize any technology that had been invented or would be invented from any universe and era. The UA beings made sure the mugs had access to whatever they needed on his own. Data was extremely strong, but being a mug with an energy baton made him that much stronger and a formidable asset. The OZ soldiers had no idea what they were about to be up against. Data had just recently finished his training and was on his first mission as a promoted mug. He'd been assigned to Prince Dakota's team, and Beverly, 14, would be assessing Dakota's abilities in the field. She was second in command on the team behind Dakota. Data finished his training in record time ahead of every single mug, including Dakota. And Malcolm was pissed at first until he remembered Data was technically a machine. Then he was in awe. New paragraph. Your Majesty, are there other mugs in the castle? Austin asked as the others were quickly led through the door to safety. Yes, we all breached the castle simultaneously. Several of them walked right in the front door, pretending to be tourists. They are fighting the OZ in the antechamber now, Prince Dakota said as Austin's father nudged him towards the QWD. His mother was holding a still snoozing Amos. Okay, nice to meet you, Austin said and waved as he was led through the QWD. You as well. We'll talk later. Enjoy your visit on our flagship, Dakota said with a big grin as he turned to look at the other mugs. What is your plan, Your Highness? Kalis asked with a big toothy grin as they heard something large ran the locked door again. He was a teenage Klingon from a past era in his universe. The 24th century was nearly 2,000 years in his future, but he was ecstatic to be able to fight alongside Klingons and other kids from such vastly different eras, universes, and species. It was fascinating. Excuse me. New paragraph. QSW, Prince Dakota said simply as he headed towards the closed door and stood a few feet away with one end of his baton facing the door. The other mugs grinned as they followed suit. They were all now facing the door and were about to let loose with a blast. At QSW was a quantum shockwave, and those vamps on the other side of that door were about to get it good. There was a short energy buildup, and then kaboom! Once Austin arrived on the Inceptum, since the wormhole door wasn't closed immediately, he thought he heard a thunderous explosion from the other side just before the wormhole door was shut down. He couldn't wait to see the results of the battle between the Mugs and the OZ soldiers. Scene change. Scene change. Sorry. I'm going to take a break, everyone, and then I will continue. Welcome back, everyone. New scene. The antechamber. A short while earlier. STC, Bryce Crenshaw, was the team leader of the Mugs with him, infiltrating the OU castle. He knew what the OZ was going to attempt to do to him. His undercover Mugs and the government agents with them, and the OZ were about to get their asses royally handed to them. They were following a tour guide down a corridor, and they were headed towards an antechamber where many humans had been slaughtered and their blood taken. Bryce noticed someone watching them from a window of the castle as they walked in. He wondered if it was an OU member, which he now understood was the peaceful faction, which never killed humans. Just before they got to the antechamber door, their proximity scanners told him there were various people that appeared to be hiding behind tall marble pillars in the room which supported the high arched ceiling. He guessed they were OZ members, hiding to try to kill them and then drink their blood. They were about to be in for a surprise. Other members were hiding behind doors, large furniture, and even on the ceiling. Most people didn't look up until it was too late. The OZ, hiding on the ceiling, wore clothing that matched the colors painted on the ceiling. Only an observer with keen eyesight would see them while glancing up. There were several newly promoted Mugs on their first battle mission, and they couldn't wait to get started. New paragraph. These OZ punks won't know what hit them, Bryce thought as he struggled not to grin or giggle aloud at the massive advantage the Mugs had over the OZ soldiers and citizens. He kept his facial features as neutral as possible so they wouldn't suspect anything was amiss. He casually walked into the antechamber, followed by the other Mugs. There were 3 high-backed chairs with soft cloth coverings that resembled something a king or queen might sit in, and the chair in the middle had the highest back. His energy baton sensors told him 3 figures were hiding behind the chairs. The last Mug walked into the chamber, and then the double doors were swiftly shut and bolted from the outside. As soon as he heard the bolt latch, he gave a swift command aloud before the OZ could mount an assault on the unsuspecting tourists, who gave no indication they were members of a superpowered army. "Cloak, now!" he ordered sternly, just as several OZ members suddenly emerged from hiding to try and attack them. The eyes of several OZ widened in shock as the Mugs disappeared from sight, as if by magic. Scene change. Everyone, I'm going to take a quick break, then I'll continue. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. New scene. The antechamber. Several moments before Bryce and company entered, Prime Lord Valerian and several of his OZ constituents waited patiently as another unsuspecting group of tourists were led towards the antechamber they'd used for eons to murder people and drain them of their blood to drink. He'd also directed some of his soldiers to head to the dungeons and take care of the senator and the other people with her. If Prince Dakota and his goons were going to attack, they were going to get one last glorious drink of human blood in to enjoy before they were murdered by the superpowered army. But Valerian and his cohorts had no idea that the Mugs had already infiltrated the castle and were about to give them a taste of their own medicine, a good old-fashioned butt-kicking. New paragraph. "Oh, I'm going to enjoy making these tourists suffer while I drain them dry," Prime Lord Valerian said with a devious sneer as he crouched behind his high-backed chair to hide from the unsuspecting tourists being led to their slaughter. He glanced at one of his wickedly grinning colleagues that was hiding behind another high-backed chair next to his. The person hiding behind the chair on the other side of his was also excited for this latest feeding. As soon as the large double doors closed and they heard the bolt click to indicate they were locked from the outside, they were all going to jump out from their hiding spots and take this latest group of humans down, or so they thought. The excitement rose as they heard the group walking into the antechamber. But something was quite different. There was no talking, and that confused Valerian. All the tourists by this point were always chatting along and oohing with excitement at seeing the shiny multicolored marble that was all over the huge Gothic antechamber. But now there was nothing. Not one sound came from the tourists. It made no sense unless... They suddenly heard the door slam shut, and then they heard the bolt clicking from the other side. New paragraph. "It is time, my lord." Darius Lockwood, who was Valerian's second in command, chimed as he suddenly rose from behind the chair next to Prime Lord Valerian and intended to jump down from where the chairs were positioned. There was a short set of wide, white marble stairs that went up from the floor of the antechamber to what looked like a stage, but was more like what a king or queen would sit on while they addressed their subjects in a castle. Valerian was more guarded and poked his head up from behind his chair to see a bunch of young people and young adults who appeared to almost be wearing the same thing, except for a few color differences, which he suddenly realized might be indicative of military ranks. The people looked focused and non-smiling, almost as if they were ready to fight. New paragraph. "No, they're already here," Lord Valerian said, with wide eyes, as the person in front of the group suddenly grinned at him wickedly and magically produced what looked like a long glowing baton staff weapon. The others in the group quickly followed suit, and the batons extended from their fisted hands like telescopic beating sticks. "No, wait!" he yelped to his constituents to try and warn them at the battle to come. He suddenly realized these people were using advanced technology, which would be formidable weaponry against the OZ. He gasped as the lead person suddenly gave a command, just as several OZ soldiers jumped down from the high ceiling to try and kill them. New paragraph. "Cloak now!" Bryce yelled as he and his group suddenly adopted a fighting stance. Just as they vanished from sight, the OZ members gasped with wide eyes as their latest victims magically disappeared. They now realized this latest feeding had just turned into an attack from outside with people who they were certain had advanced weapons training. They knew for certain that no human army had such advanced tech, and they were now positive these were extraterrestrials of some kind. Several members had already initiated their attack and were now exposed from their hiding places, and they jumped down from the ceiling and other places where they'd been concealed. Everyone wondered if these latest victims were wizards. New paragraph. Where did they go? Darius grumbled as he glanced around while he stood on the now apparently empty antechamber floor. Prime Lord Valerian knew better and stayed behind his chair, but with his head still poked up as he nervously looked around. He reached in his pocket and tapped the small remote that would start a countdown on the fusion reactor bomb he had hidden in the castle. It beeped to let him know the command had been transmitted. They now had 5 minutes before the bomb and the others hidden in the USA detonated. They stood frozen in different parts of the antechamber as they nervously glanced around while they held fighting stances. Darius wondered what Valerian had seen to spook him into staying behind the chair. New paragraph. Come out, wherever you are. An OZ named Gannon sneered. Okay, your wish is my command, a hidden voice said calmly, just as a bolt of bluish-white electricity came from nowhere and zapped Gannon in his chest. The bolt lifted him off his feet and flung him through the air. Yeah! Gannon yelped as he suddenly took flight and plowed into some of his buddies. They yelped as they went down and thudded to the floor like bowling pins. The mugs suddenly reappeared in various places throughout the room and wasted no time fearlessly picking fights with the remaining OZ. Darius gasped as several of the mugs suddenly changed their faces from human to some other species of different colors and looks. Some had blue skin, yellow, and jet black, and others had high, weird-looking foreheads, and a few had sharply pointed ears. The blue-skinned ones had what looked like short antennae on their heads, and they were all now wearing tight-fitting black bodysuits with various color stripes, which Darius suspected denoted rank. These mugs weren't messing around and would probably fight to the death, and every single one of them had a long, glowing, well-adorned baton that they were using to beat their opponents with. Even their younger-looking mugs appeared ready to fight. New paragraph. Suddenly, everyone was making grunting sounds as they fought. But it was obvious the Mugs had the upper hand and would not, under any circumstances, allow their blood to be taken. Prime Lord Valerian gasped as one of the OZ was suddenly and tightly restrained with some type of glowing energy ropes. The OZ was able to stand, but was unable to move her arms or upper legs since they were tightly bound with the bluish-white glowing ropes. He guessed they used electromagnetic tech to operate. She wasn't being electrocuted, but simply could not move. She could only breathe. The ropes appeared from one of the batons like an energy weapon and instantly wrapped around the unfortunate member. Valerian knew this fight was not in their favor and decided to escape. He'd already planned to leave in the event the bomb had to be activated. He was going to head to an underground hidden bomb shelter and wait there until the dust settled. And then he was going to head to a safe house he and his people built in an undisclosed location in a remote region of Canada. They had enough frozen animal blood stored there to last years. He jumped up, spun around, and started to head for an exit. But just as he turned, another mug stood in his way and had a glowing baton pointed at him. The baton suddenly flared up a bit brighter and hummed with an obvious electrical buzz. New paragraph. Nope. Where do you think you're going, Mr. Valerian? The mug, who'd grinned at Valerian earlier before the fighting started, said with narrowed eyes as he glared at him. It's Lord Valerian, and I believe you have me at a disadvantage, Lord Valerian said as he returned to stare at his captor. Forgive me, I'm STC Bryce Crenshaw, and I'm Prince Dakota's second in command. Pleased to meet you. Now, how do we deactivate the bombs I'm certain you just activated a moment ago from your pocket? Bryce asked as he stood with the baton pointed at Valerian's chest. Valerian knew if he tried to make a move, he'd be zapped 6 ways past Sunday. He was dismayed to hear several punches and hard smacks landing on the OZ members, and the OZ members thudding to the floor. The fighting sounds were dying down, and he glanced over his shoulder to see almost all of his people had been restrained by those energy ropes. The Mugs make quick work of him and his few dozen soldiers. New paragraph. You cannot. I installed a 5-minute countdown to give me time to escape to a bomb shelter. That's obviously not happening, Prime Lord Valerian said nonchalantly as he shrugged as though he wasn't afraid to be vaporized by a nuclear fusion bomb. So, you're saying it cannot be stopped once it's activated? Bryce asked as one of the other Mugs, one with a high forehead, walked up the stairs and calmly stood next to him while holding a well-adorned baton upright. But the mug appeared as though she was ready to beat Prime Lord Valerian into submission should the need arise. A new paragraph. That's correct. And what species is this? Prime Lord Valerian asked with a wry grin as he looked at the mug while Bryce lifted his arm and called someone on a communication device on his wrist. Bryce talked in the background while the mug talked to Valerian. New paragraph. I am a Klingon, and my name is Beator. I'm 17. It's a pleasure to meet you, my lord, Beator said respectfully with a toothy grin. She seemed genuinely happy to meet him. Either that, or she was hoping to have to beat his ass if he tried something. Prime Lord Valerian was impressed by her forehead ridges. These Klingons were more impressive than any humans. New paragraph. Lord Valerian, how much time remains before they blow? Bryce asked as he paused in his conversation with whoever he was talking to. Valerian guessed it was the mug leader. 4 minutes and 30 seconds, Prime Lord Valerian said after he pulled the remote from his pocket and looked at a small indicator screen on top. It appeared to be micro LED lights that showed a clock counting down. New paragraph. Did you hear that, Your Majesty? Bryce asked with obvious annoyance as he directed his voice into a microphone that was integrated into his wrist comm unit. I did. Hold them there in that room while we take care of the bombs. I'll get back to you. Dakota out. Prince Dakota's voice said from the other end of the line before he terminated the call. So is this Prince Dakota your leader? Prime Lord Valerian asked as he stood still with his arms at his sides. He is, and the OU leader and his people and the senator and her people have been safely transported to our orbiting starship, Bryce said with a hint of a grin as though he'd enjoyed checkmating Prime Lord Valerian and the others in the chamber. You don't say, Prime Lord Valerian asked with a wry grin. Indeed. His Majesty is looking forward to meeting you, and he has a proposition that you'll find interesting. A proposition? You mean he doesn't want to kill all of us? Prime Lord Valerian asked with a stupefied look. He was certain Prince Dakota planned to kill every last OZ member. Of course not. We're not murderers. He's going to find a new world for you and your people to live on, one that can support the exotic plant life you require to live, Bryce said as he turned his energy baton to a vertical position and held it with his hand. The restrained OZ gasped at this latest info and couldn't believe an enemy would go out of his way to help them. Prime Lord Valerian was wide-eyed and could tell by Bryce's demeanor that he was telling the truth. Because had Prince Dakota actually wanted to kill them, Bryce and his soldiers probably would have already done it instead of simply restraining them. Valerian was intrigued to see two mugs walking around the room while tapping weird-looking syringes to the necks of the restrained OZ. They had no needle and appeared to be advanced tech. The OZ appeared to almost feel better after whatever was in the syringe went into their bloodstreams. Valerian suddenly wondered what was in those syringes. Scene change. Everyone, I'm going to take a break and then I will continue with the next part of Chapter 5, the second part of Chapter 5 in a new episode. Thank you and have a good night.